right, welcome to Screen Time with today's Communiqué. We are so excited to have Mr. Ryan Davis with us this evening, talking a little bit about all things fatherhood and Father's Day. Of course, we know that for the month of June, we are celebrating fathers for the entire month. So before we jump into our conversation, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our series sponsor, Mr. Billy Moody and Q Clothier. So welcome, Mr. Davis.
Hey, thank you, Kenny.
So before we jump into our conversation, why don't you tell our viewers just a little bit about you and your career path?
Oh, my career path. I don't know if you would call it a path. It was more like a career meandering.
Okay.
You know, so I'm currently, um, you know, germane to this thing we're doing today. A father, three girls. That's a career in and of itself. Apparently, it's turned out to be a grateful husband of my wife, Kimberly, uh, and my three girls, Delaney, Sarah, and Ella. And I want y'all to keep me in your prayers. We have a middle schooler coming up this year. Lift me up
Yeah,
and say in your best prayers. Uh,
indeed. Indeed. So speaking of fatherhood, you mentioned that you have three beautiful little girls, and they are indeed beautiful. So, what I want you to do is just take a moment and think back and reflect upon when you discovered that you were having your first baby. Um, what was that feeling like? Share with us some of the thoughts and emotions that were going through your head at the time.
so I was excited. I think I won't say that this was necessarily a planned thing or whatever, but I mean we knew we wanted kids, and we've been married for about 2 years at that point, and so yeah, I was excited, but I mean I was also admittedly just kind of wondering about it because I mean no matter how much you see it, you see other people do it. I mean it's obviously to state the obvious. I mean it's different to think of yourself in that way. And I think another thing that didn't really leave me with any worries was that I was um, a little bit older. I'd say if it had been 10 years, 5 years earlier, you know what I'm saying, probably didn't need to be anybody's father. So the good influence of a good wife prepared me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We love the good influences of your beautiful wife, Kimberly. And so, speaking of influence, a lot of times people say that when they become parents, they find themselves doing things and saying things that their parents did and said to them when they were younger. So, can you think of something that either you already nodding your head? Think of something that either your mom or dad said to you when you were a child that you find yourself as a father saying or doing with the girls right now.
Oh, my dad was a, a real, kind of straight shooter. But I mean, he had some of the best parenting rhetoric. Like, if we got out of order, he'd say, "Hey, you better come to yourself." I say that to my girls all the time. Like, "Hey, you better come to yourself." I don't know exactly what that even means. Uh, um, and then, my mom, she would ask us often because we were wild. We were kind of some wild children. I have two brothers who were very close in age, and she would often ask us, "Have you lost your mind?" And I said that here and there.
Yeah.
And I think another thing is Kim and I, my wife, talking about how I mean, not just happening now, but it's a lot more noticeable. We just call out any name, we're talking to one person, we just call out a name until we get to yours. And, you know,
Yeah.
kids learn not to be offended by that.
My mother does that quite often still to this day. She just,
Yeah.
yeah, she just calls all of us until, yeah, yes,
You know which one you are.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I thought that was just something that she did, but apparently all parents do that. So yeah, and speaking of parenting and parenting advice, any advice that your parents gave to you, your father specifically, when you learned that you were going to become a father, that you kind of took to heart, that you can share and reflect upon with us?
Yeah, I mean, and these are some of those deceptively simple things that I mean, you think, of course, you know for yourself. But my dad said very often, he said, make sure you get some rest. He would just, say that. I mean, it's very plain, it's very obvious, but when you're in the whirlwind of life, sometimes rest is a hard thing to come by. And I know that he was saying at that intervening period that rest is necessary, and you should make sure that you prioritize rest because um, I mean, obviously, life in general requires energy, but life, when you have in your hands the life of another person, requires, I think, a different kind of energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then speaking of energy, um, what is it that you like to do with the girls? Any activities that you can kind of think back and reflect upon that you guys did when, I mean, they're still young, still babies, really.
Hmm.
Um, Anything that you can think and say to yourself, I am so glad that me and the girls did that activity. I'm so glad they asked me to do this with them. What one or two things can you share?
So, I like to cook. I mean, it's like just even for myself. I'll be honest with you. Most often, I prefer to be in the kitchen by myself when I'm cooking, and you know, it's one of the few things that I'm kind of impatient about. But the girl's always curious, and if I direct them, they can be helpful.
Mm.
And so we made Ella has a few food allergies, and so we're always trying out different recipes to accommodate that. And so we made some cinnamon rolls together, and so you know it becomes a thing. It was at first just a singular thing to do, but then of course it became a thing that you do. This is something that we do together. And another thing, there was a lot of time during the more closed off parts of the pandemic where we were just together. So we walked a lot, and we would fairly often drive to other areas and walk. And then I thought, it's important too that we walk in our own community. There's a lot of things to see. Kids get to know the topography of where they live, and so we would do random stuff. Like one day, somebody picked up a leaf, and we put that on the list of things to look up. What kind of leaf is this? And I knew what it was. It was a mahogany tree leaf, and we looked up mahogany trees, and so found a picture of Billie Holiday with the big, flower in her hair. And then we walked past Arkansas Baptist, and they wanted to know more about that. And so we went home and we looked up Arkansas Baptist, and in particular Joseph Booker,
Mm.
one of um, the stalwarts of Arkansas Baptist, and really of Baptist and civil rights movements in the early 1900s. So, I think a lot of opportunities present themselves, and kids can be expensive if you allow them to be. I think they're expensive in general, but I think I found that there are some very meaningful and costless ways to engage with and to really do things with your children. Learned a lot about that during the pandemic, during the shutdowns.
It's right, absolutely. Just get out there and explore like you guys were doing. It doesn't cost a thing, um,
Hmm.
but just a little bit of time. And so, when you think about the fact that you have three beautiful girls, you're a girl dad, and you have two brothers. So, what is it like being the father of three girls? Did you ever wish sometimes, man, I just wish I had a junior. I wish I had a little boy I could just kind of rough around with.
Well, and I never. People don't think I'm being truthful when I say this, but
Mhm.
I really never did have a preference
Okay.
as far as who. Um, I think, um, you know, sometimes that's rooted in something. The idea that your lineage stops at at the taking of a different last name, or those kinds of things. And so, I mean, I never really thought about it that way. I also never really thought about it from the kind of the rough and tumble perspective, namely because I'm not really all that rough and tumble a person. You know what I'm saying? I can play some sports badly and enjoy them, and and otherwise watch them and not really know much about them. So
Right.
it was never really that dynamic, which I get. I mean, I understand. I have nephews, and I always tell folks that too. It's like, don't you want another son? And I say, first off, if I have another child, that would be 4 children altogether, not just three, and I'm good at three. And then second, I have 4 nephews, and
Mhm.
so there it is.
Yeah.
And as far as the wrestle and rumble around, um, my oldest, she's a little bit too, she's too big for all that right now. But the other two, they love to do those things.
Right.
Especially my middle child. She's a
Yes.
she's a booger whoop, as the old folks say.
Right. Yes, she is. And all three of them are beautiful. They
Yeah,
definitely are.
I
And
agree.
so, um, if you were to encounter a
Mm.
young man who was expecting and said, "Hey, Ryan, hey, Mr. Davis, I just learned that I'm about to be a dad." What words of wisdom would you impart into him?
Um, you know, I would first off say from a position of compassion that this young man should have, be patient with himself,
Mhm.
and understand that nobody is equipped with the handbook for. I mean, there's certainly some handbooks out there. Everybody's written one, but there's no specific handbook for how to raise all children. And and I think maybe in my life's work, working with young people, with older youth in particular, I've seen this in people who are not well equipped for various reasons, people who are very under equipped, people who are just unprepared in general. And I'll say this, you know, family and those relationships that you have with your children can be forged under any circumstances, and it really just is a matter of intention that if you intend to have and you work to have, you know, a meaningful relationship with your child or your children, it can happen. And I don't know. And sometimes I hate to say it because I really feel like I'm speaking from a position of a privilege, because it really is a privilege for me to be able to see my children and be with them every day, and to have them in a stable and loving household. But the loving part is something that anybody can do.
Mhm.
No amount of instability can negate, the love that you have for your child or your children. So, uh,
One final question for you.
I know.
You're a man of faith, and so what role has faith played in your fatherhood walk?
Well, you know, in my religious tradition, in my faith, the text that holds some sacred meaning to me talks about that great itinerant preacher from Roman occupied Palestine, who we know as Jesus. And he refers to children several times. He refers to, at one point he says in Matthew alone that children should not be forbidden. And so, that takes on an expansive meaning for me in the way I practice my religion in relation to children. Like I believe, for example, that children have a right to participate in the religious life of the church.
Mhm.
I'm grateful that for myself, and I imagine for a lot of folks, my first opportunity to speak before people, to sing with a group of people, to really get some of that spiritual camaraderie came from inside of the church. And so I think the church needs to really kind of continue to do that. You think about some of our greatest singers, some of our greatest writers. James Baldwin, even though he had a difficult relationship, it's a difficult is probably an understatement, a traumatizing relationship with the church, he does acknowledge that a lot of the fire that he got, a lot of the eloquence, a lot of the boldness, and where a lot of his characters came from the church. So I guess I'm saying for myself, I didn't say a whole bunch of things not related to the question, but for myself, when Jesus says, "Suffer the children and forbid them not," I think there is a matter of getting out of the way of children that adults need to do also. Forbid them not to come unto me. Uh, these folks represent the kingdom of heaven, and those are nice words to say on Children's Day, but I like to be, I like to think I am more thoughtful about what that really means in practice. You know, what kind of compassion can I bring to bear? Kids have bad days. Nobody yells at me when I make a mistake at work. Um, you know, Nobody beats me when I do something errant, and I do so, fairly about as regular as most humans do. And so, understanding that we're shaping folks who we hope can take the helm of the world and turn it right side up, and I see far too many um, older children,
Mhm.
and I don't got old enough to I think older children reaches all the way up to about the age of 25, 24. I'll say 24. Older children who never learn how to think critically, never
Mhm.
learn how to reason analytically, never learn how to think for themselves, never learn how to communicate persuasively. And I think within the context of my faith, those are things that we can really help children do.
Right.
So I think the church should take a more outmoded stance on how children are treated, what happens to children, from a more holistic perspective. Everything from really bringing resources to bear for after school programming to, really being conscious of the limits of stuff like, your food pantry, for instance. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh, a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. And while you were answering the question, one I know I said one final question, but I just have one more. Your fantasy dinner. You said you like to cook. So if you were to prepare a meal and invite all of your favorite fathers and or father figures, be it alive or gone on home to glory, who would it be?
Well, so of course, I would invite my dad, and that would be a gas because my dad is most of the time hilarious. Um, I invite my dearly departed grandfather, Reverend Levi G. Davis, who, was always just really a bully with us and really served me an example of integrity in ministry. I would, of course, invite my other grandfather, Reverend T. Roosevelt Brown, and he has a really great self-deprecating humor, but he really is kind of a powerful man, physically, and just powerful, but always very gentle. And you could tell he loves kids. He loves to laugh, so it'd be great to have him there. And then, if I had to say, a couple of spiritual ancestors.
Mhm.
Now, this is weird because I'm 2 times older than this person
Okay.
when this person died, but Fred Hampton. If
Mm.
I can get Fred Hampton, who was in reality 30 years older than me, so old enough,
Yeah.
Fred Hampton would have to be there.
Yeah.
And then the poet um, who, um, really helped me to think, critically about Black art, Black literature in particular, more as a critic than as a poet, though I enjoy his poetry. But Little Rock native Don Lee,
Mm.
Hakeem Madabudi,
Yeah.
certainly would have him there, which would mean that this would have to be a very strictly vegan meal
Yes.
because,
Indeed.
if I could get like 10 or 15, the list would go on. I would love to have James Hal Cone there, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
uh, would love to have, Gardner Taylor, that great prince of preachers there. And, if I could just make these people some food and listen, I
Mhm.
would be right happy about it.
Right. Gosh, that's a powerful list. Well, Mr. Davis, Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking some time to talk about Father,
Yeah.
Father's Day, those influencers in your life who you like to have around your dinner table. And thank you for everything that you have done on behalf of the community and that you continue to do on behalf of the community. And
Thank you.
so, with that, happy Father's Day. And that's a wrap.
Yay.